Hi, I'm Tatum, and today we're diving in to what it's like to have a blood cancer like leukemia or lymphoma. So I've got three great guests with me today who have three very different experiences. So I've got Chris,
Not your grandma's cancer show.
Not
your grandma's cancer show.
For the first time. Satveer was recently married, also in his 20s.
This is not your grandma's cancer show.
Had a little girl. And welcome all of you to the podcast. So I'd love to start
From
this
Shine
today by
Cancer
finding out,
Support. This is
not
your grandma's
blood
cancer show.
Before, what did you think a blood cancer was, Christian?
I knew it existed and it was something that happened. I knew the basics, that it was, in your blood, and that was about it.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm not sure I'd ever heard of anyone say blood cancer. I was told I had lymphoma, and I had vaguely heard of lymphoma and thought that it was a cancer, but I really didn't know much at all. It was a whole new world to me.
Not your grandma's cancer show.
Is that getting this kind of cancer, there isn't necessarily a lot of information about it out there, or what there is quite unique. Satveer, how was it for you?
Not your grandma's cancer show.
I knew about leukemia, and that was a blood cancer. I studied dentistry. I'm a dentist, so would have learned about cancer at university, but not really deep diving into it.
Not your grandma's cancer
what
show.
It means, how it would affect it, what the different outcomes were.
From
and
Shine.
just
Not your
with
grandma's
these
cancer show.
Different cancers, lymphoma, leukemia, how many different types there were, and whatever you're diagnosed with, there's a different sort of.
From Shine. Not your grandma's cancer show.
With Tatum even when sort of got my diagnosis, it was like, okay, so was it Hodgkin's, was it non-Hodgkin's, and it's
This is not your grandma's cancer show.
Yeah, I remember when you said to me, I forgot which one it was.
Yeah.
Because
From Shine Cancer Support. This is not your grandma's cancer show.
We have a sense with other cancers that there's a tumour or a sign to look for, or surgery, or this understanding of a certain type of chemotherapy. I'm asking actually all of you, what were your first symptoms? Because that's something again that's a bit different. Christian, what kind of side effects? Not side effects. What kind of not side effects yet? What kind of symptoms were the first time?
Not your grandma's cancer show.
I had a infection in my mouth, just towards one of my in between my two molars, I think it was, and it ended up necrotic, and that happened. I was going back and forth to A&E to try and get antibiotics that weren't working, and then I started getting really weak at work, and then unfortunately later on I got diagnosed with COVID before I got hospitalized with my cancer, but I was just incredibly weak, and I was putting it up to me having COVID, but unfortunately it turned out to be leukemia.
Yeah, and I think that kind of masking of other things, is it just something that's in my mouth that's, just taking a long time to heal? Is it just I'm feeling weak at work? Am I run down? Satveer, what were some of your early signs that something wasn't right?
I was really tired all of the time, and initially I put it down to, as you mentioned, recently got married. I've got sort of two sets of families now. My weekends are really, really busy, and when you get married, you sort of want to meet everyone. And then it started to get to about 9 months after I got married, and I was still exhausted all the time. And as sort of a mid-20s, you think you should be full of energy. You're sort of reaching the peak of your life. I was getting concerned, and I asked my dad, when you were my age, you worked 12-hour shifts. Were you tired? And he was like, yeah, you just sort of got on with it. And I was coming home really grumpy, really tired, and I kind of knew something wasn't right. But cancer's the last thing in your head. You think, all right, vitamin deficiency or something. So that was sort of the long-term symptoms I was getting. I was getting ill a lot more often, probably have a cold or a flu once a month. And then I got what prompted me to go to A&E is I had a rash all over my body. My resting heart rate was 120, and just severe chest pain. And then also at the same time, I got a lump in my neck. So within the space of 2 weeks, all the sort of symptoms that were there were that pushed me to go to A&E.
It's really hard to kind of benchmark tiredness, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah.
and we don't have enough words to describe it. And that thing of asking your dad, like, were you tired? I think when you've experienced that, like, soul bone exhaustion, it's different to anything else. But I think it's really, really hard to explain that to anybody. Ceinwen.
I think mine was a little bit complicated because I was pregnant and I had my daughter, and then she was born prematurely because I became really ill. And I think I probably became really ill and had to have her delivered early because I had cancer. But obviously, I think when you're pregnant, your body kind of suppresses your immune system. So I felt really, really tired, like everyone says. But I didn't really have a lot of kind of classic symptoms until my daughter was born. And then once she was born, I had all of them, like night sweats, fevers, back pain, lumps, lack of appetite, throwing up. But again, those can be quite difficult to benchmark. And so everyone told me, I was in the hospital for about 3.5 weeks, and people kept saying it was pregnancy complications, or maybe I was traveling a lot for work, maybe you've got other illnesses. But I think once they sent a hematologist in, he must have gone like tick, 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 right? Like, oh, you've got all of the symptoms. It's just you really need someone who can put them all together and see, yeah, this isn't normal. This is not normal for a younger, healthier person to be going through all of this.
From hearing all of your stories, there is something about having these symptoms, them not necessarily raising an alarm right off the bat, because they can be other things, especially when you've got other things going on in your life, whether it be training and marriage, and you just had your baby, just moving into your first place away from home, then getting really thrown into this different world very fast. Christian, can you give me a bit of a snapshot of your life right before you got sick?
I had just moved into a new flat. It was the first time I'd ever moved away from home. It was a lot of time away from family, so they hadn't seen me for a while. They started a new job as well, so things were quite hectic.
So you were away from home for the first time when you got that sick. And can you tell me about that day that you thought, actually, I need an ambulance?
I couldn't move at all. I was literally stuck in bed with my uh, ex-partner at the time, and I turned to her and I said, I can't, I've got to go to hospital and I can't drive myself. I knew I was out of it, but I was aware enough to go that me driving to hospital is not a good idea. I need to call an ambulance. I called an ambulance and they said they'd be able to come to me in 24 hours. I think worry started to set in there. I messaged my sister and told her that I'm going to hospital, and I don't know if I thought she'd tell my mum or whatever, but maybe 20 minutes after I sent that message to her, I get a knock on my door, and it's my mum, and she looks at me and goes, "You need to get in the car. We're going to hospital."
Once you got to the hospital, what were they thinking was going on with you?
After my mum literally wheeled me into hospital, because at that point just lost all strength in my legs. So she wheeled me in. They had to keep me isolated because I still had COVID symptoms at the time and was still testing positive. So they took me into the room, took blood straight away, and as soon as I mean, the results didn't take long. It was maybe half an hour. The nurse comes in and she says, "My job today is to keep you alive."
I mean, that the whirlwind of that, shortly beforehand, you're thinking, do I wait 24 hours for an ambulance? I know I can't drive myself there. You're figuring it out, to suddenly being in hospital and the nurse talking about your life being on the line. Were you able to take that in at the moment, or like, how were you able to kind of process hearing that?
I think I was kind of lucky and unlucky to be that critical at that point, because I kind of didn't really know what was going on until they started putting blood products into me, and then I sort of started to clock a bit more what was going on. But I think it took at least a couple more days because I think it was I've got it tattooed on me, 12th of June, I was hospitalized. And then obviously 2 days later, I found out officially that it was leukemia. But I don't think it's until the doctor sort of sits down and sort of goes, well, we think we know what it is. Would you like to know, kind of thing? And then you go, oh, it's bad. So it took me a couple of days to fully appreciate the picture of it. But yeah, it was it was a bit rough.
Yeah, and then did you start treatment straight away?
Yeah, so the original plan was to get rid of the COVID, and then I think so the 12th, 14th, I got diagnosed. I think it was either the 14th or the 15th. They basically turned round and said, the things are going too far, too quick. We're going to have to start treatment for you. And it was literally the next day after that they started it. I signed papers obviously for it, and 7 weeks later I'm walking out of hospital.
Wow. So that kind of being hospitalized straight away doesn't really give you a free moment, does it, to really think about what you're going through and what support you might need, or meet anybody else going through that. When you were in hospital, did you meet anyone else that was your age?
No, I never saw any other patients or anything like that until, I started going to Oxford for treatment, but that's months later. It was more a case of physically supporting me rather than mentally at the time.
Right. Talk about being taken out of your regular life and then literally being isolated in this very different reality. And when you had that first treatment, how did you feel as a result, like physically? Like how did the treatment affect you?
Felt broken, really broken afterwards. 7 weeks is a long time. There was a lot of complications. And, I went from 15 stone because of the fluids that they were pumping into me, all the way down to nine, just under 9 stone towards the end of it. It's a brutal reality coming home and suddenly thinking, I'm having to relearn stairs and stuff.
Is there anything that you think would have been useful in that time?
A lot of what kept me going through all of that was family, keeping in contact with people, as hard as it is, because there was a lot of times where I just was not with it. But keeping in contact with people is important, with your family as well. Having a support group is quite important in those first couple of weeks. For like actual things, I think it's going to sound really stupid, but a cooling towel was really helpful during those neutropenic moments with fevers and stuff.
To find a little bit of comfort and a little bit of ease, like right off the bat, like is everything. I see Ceinwen smiling here. I'd love to bring you into the conversation. How has it been for you hearing from Christian?
I think it really highlights, I guess, what some of the differences are with blood cancers, because in most cases, if you have a kind of a primary tumor, you don't tend to end up just in hospital for weeks and weeks because you felt terrible. And actually something very similar happened to me. I got out of the hospital after I had my daughter, had terrible back pain and went back in and then didn't leave for 6 months. Would never have thought that that would happen to me. So, but again, it's a kind of urgency of the situation where, they finally discover what's wrong with you. And then they're like, you're really ill and you need to start chemotherapy in 2 days. And in my case, I didn't know anything about chemotherapy, really. It was a whole whirlwind. So I think that's really what it brings up, just listening to Christian. That's, the memories.
And again, that isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, like you had just made your family, you had little Mary, and then you're in hospital. Can you tell us a little bit, what that was like for you, and like how did you, as Christian was saying, kind of keep that connection going?
I sort of bounced around a few different wards before I was put on a hematology ward. And I really hated being on a ward. It's so noisy. There are weird people on the ward. There are some lovely people as well, but it's really hard to sleep. So when I started treatment, they put me in an isolation room, which actually I liked just because I had my own space and I could sleep. Obviously, I couldn't see anybody, unless they came in to see me. I wasn't allowed out. So, it was really hard because I had a newborn baby and I couldn't be with her. I mean, my husband brought her in most days to see me when I was well enough. He came in every day, and then I had my mom and my sisters and my family friends as well, come and visit when they could, like when I was well enough. Because that's the other thing, it sounds really nice, like, oh, you want all these visitors, but actually a lot of the time when you're going through that, either mentally or physically, you don't necessarily want all these people around. So it's a really tough thing to balance, I think. It's just very much being taken out of your regular reality and then sitting there and thinking, how did this happen to me? Not that you'd wish it on anyone else, but I just remember being quite surprised that this was my life all of a sudden. I hadn't seen it coming. Wasn't on my bingo card.
And, since then you have co-founded Shine, and are co-CEO of Shine, and you've met other people with similar diagnosis to you. And I'm just wondering, like, what are some of the things that you see that, kind of is a bit different to other cancers, or things that people sort of tend to not understand as much about blood cancers?
I think the biggest thing actually is that, with a blood cancer, it's everywhere. It's in your blood. Your body is filled with blood. So you don't have a lump that can be taken out and an area where you can have radiotherapy. I mean, those things do sometimes happen. You might have a tumor that they remove, they might use radiotherapy, but it's not the same as having, just one primary tumor. And so I can remember, for example, when I was in the hospital, someone giving me some kind of mindfulness for cancer patients thing, and I was like, I'll give it a try. But, it was like, concentrate on the location of your lump and that the chemotherapy is working. And I remember thinking, well, I can't do that because this is my entire body. So I think that can be quite hard to explain to people. For me also, we talked about the tiredness and feeling really terrible. I felt absolutely awful before I was diagnosed. And actually the first rounds of chemotherapy made me feel better. And I think for a lot of people, that's the opposite, because you don't know that something's wrong. You might have a lump, maybe you go to the doctor, and then you have to have this treatment that makes you feel awful. I actually thought, this is a miracle. I can get up and go to the bathroom and brush my teeth. And I hadn't been able to do that really very well for weeks. So there are some different things. And then obviously, it can affect your immune system. Often blood cancer patients become neutropenic every sort of block of or round of chemotherapy that they have. Then you might get ill. That can be different than other cancer types. So your immune system might be affected in the short or long term as well. But the flip side to all of that is I think there are some really interesting treatments coming along for blood cancer patients, like CAR T therapy, which hopefully will really mean, make a big difference to all of us. So it's not all bad. Let's see.
I was going to say, if you haven't listened to the episode about rare cancers and you want to know more about CAR T, George was on that episode and he's just been through it, and he kind of shares a bit about that and how he found other people within Shine who also were going through it, and they developed their own little WhatsApp group where they check in with each other because, treatment's new. And actually, there's quite a few things from that episode about having a rare cancer that I can hear when people don't quite understand, when you don't have a lot of knowledge about it coming into it. So it's this whole new world. And then when you start to meet other people, they will have all other kinds of cancer, but actually meeting other people with a similar-ish type, let alone the same type, is just that bit more uncommon. And so when people do find each other, Ceinwen, have you seen that happen? Like when someone is like, the same.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Yeah, well, actually, I was just away this weekend running one of our events. It's called a Shake Up Max. It's a one night overnight retreat. And one of the women who was on that was stage 3 non-Hodgkin lymphoma, the same type I had. Because again, also, I think Satveer was saying, oh, did I have Hodgkin or non-Hodgkin? When you have one of those, then there's a whole bunch of other different types, right? So there's loads of different types of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. But one of the women on that retreat had something similar. And you just sort of think like, oh yeah, it's really nice to be able to chat to somebody about those treatments, because sometimes you might be in a room, say, like for me, I might know of a lot of women that have had breast cancer. And for them, that's another very unique experience where you're looking at reconstruction and different types of surgeries. But when you have blood cancer, you don't have any of that. The other thing that's quite difficult is, certainly for my type of blood cancer, once you finish treatment, there's no medication that you can take to help make sure it doesn't come back. It's literally sitting there and crossing your fingers. So that's kind of a nice thing. Weirdly a nice thing to be able to chat to somebody about. Also, both of us, our favorite biscuits were Jaffa cakes, so that was a nice coincidence as well. Controversial, I know some people think they're not biscuits, but we're going with it.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I have had a really good Jaffa biscuit cake that was actually officially a cake, and it was very good, and it was vegan because I can't.
I know the ones they are good. You can also now get donuts, Jaffa donuts, which are really delicious.
Satveer, how has it been for you hearing from Christian and Ceinwen?
I just, as Ceinwen was mentioning, talking to other people that have gone through it. Yeah, agree with that massively. One of my best friend's cousins was diagnosed with ALL leukemia about a year before I got my diagnosis. It's really hard to put into words, but just sort of talking to someone and saying, oh, I'm neutropenic, and not having to explain what that means kind of made it normal. Or like he was going to have leukemia the day after I spoke to him. I was like, all right, go smash it out, bro. And he was like, that's really weird because like I can talk about it and it's almost as if I'm just talking about everyday life, about the weather, and it's talking to someone who really understands. So talking to people massively helped to make it feel normal.
Yeah, and I can see that on both ends, like how it must have felt for you to hear him go, oh my God, that just felt like so normal.
Yeah.
And having that kind of camaraderie and language, right? That understanding of what things mean. Can you take me back to the day when you got that first ambulance journey into the hospital, what that was like for you?
Yeah, so my journey, so when I first went to A&E, I'd just come back from holiday in Cape Verde. Before I went, and whilst I was there, I was having some amoxicillin because I was getting some chest pain, and initially I thought that pain was just a chest infection. And whilst I was there on the last day of holiday, I came up with a really bad rash, and that's when my resting heart rate was 120. And I put that down to an allergic reaction to the antibiotics. I hadn't had antibiotics for about 15 years up until that point. I had a telephone GP consultation, and I told her, as I was reeling off all my symptoms, I was like, oh my God, actually, yeah, this is really bad. And she was like, I don't know what to say to you. Like, oh, you're sat in your departure lounge. You really should be going to a hospital as soon as you land. Drive yourself straight to A&E, or to get to A&E as soon as you can. So again, I went to A&E. I was like, look, it's probably an allergic reaction. Don't worry about it. It's fine. But they were great. They really insisted on me staying after they'd done my bloods. They looked at all my symptoms and everything. So I stayed the night, and then the day after, I had a CT scan of my chest, and that's when they picked up I had effusion of my heart. So that's like a build up of fluid around the layers of your heart. Essentially, your heart sits in a sac, and that sac was building up with fluid and sort of squeezing the heart and stopping it from filling up with blood. And that's right, the heart rate was raised to compensate for that. So that was my first ambulance journey, was because as soon as they saw that, they were like, right, you need to go to a heart specialist hospital, which was crazy. I think during all of it, I never really sort of processed how bad everything was. Like, I was there laughing and joking. My mum and my wife were there in the ambulance. They looked really sort of concerned for me, and I was just like laughing at them, like, guys, man, you look like you've seen a ghost. Like, it's fine, don't worry about it. Um, and then they kept me in hospital after they'd done that. They all thought it was an infection because my white blood cells were high, and that's the route everyone was going down. And I was pumped with antibiotics for about 2 or 3 weeks, and nothing was. They were doing cultures for all different types of infections, and nothing was coming back positive. Then they'd done a needle biopsy, and then they sent me home. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, they've sent me home. I'm probably fine, but I felt really, really rubbish. Like I was thinking in my head, okay, so I've been sent home. I should probably make arrangements about returning to work next week, but I just wasn't ready for it. Something inside me, I was like, no, I'm not good. I feel terrible. But then, yeah, literally 4 days after they sent me home, I had to go back because the rash returned, lips swelled up. I was looked pretty bad again, and then the effusions returned as well. So at that stage, they've done a excisional biopsy where they actually take a tissue from the lymph node. And I had a different surgeon then, and he was super savage. He came back in and he says, "Yeah, I've seen you." Like, no, didn't beat around the bush at all. And he's like, "Yeah, I saw your fluid. It's probably lymphoma." But even at that stage, I was like, "Yeah, okay, it's probably lymphoma, but there's other things that it could be as well. It's a differential. It could be anything at that stage." And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm young, I eat relatively healthy, I don't smoke. Surely not me. Like, it won't be cancer. And I didn't think it was at all. And then they took me off the antibiotics whilst they're waiting for the results of the lymph node, and I started to feel better. And I got to the point where I was like, okay, like great, I'm probably good to go to work in a few days' time. I feel great. And then they deliver the news on a Friday evening, and yeah, that's when sort of your world just sort of comes crashing down. There's like silence, and you kind of don't know what to do. My wife was with me at the time. She took it. She was there to take the news. I was there processing it. I sort of saw her. She's crying her eyes out, and I'm like, God, right, okay, like next steps. And that's when they then said you're going to Guy's in London, which is about an hour journey away from the hospital I was at. And that ambulance journey was again like it's odd. It was just odd, weird. Going through the streets of London where you'd usually go through the streets of London and you're having a good time. You've been a tourist for the day. Uh, you're going through streets where you recognise but you're going and it almost feels like you're being transported to a totally different life. And at this stage, I couldn't remember whether it's Hodgkin's or non-Hodgkin's. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. It was yeah. I mean, I remember that journey. It's crystal clear.
Mm.
It was just me and my wife in there, sort of waiting to see what the next few months would have held for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a surreal moment. Like
Yeah,
that thing of like you're in this familiar place that you're normally having a good time, but you're seeing it from this completely different vantage point
yeah,
from inside an ambulance with this kind of new reality. But it's not just you, but it's also like how the people around you, your loved ones, are also all processing it at the same
yeah.
time.
Mm.
Christian, you had spoken about your family and your sister, and I'm wondering, like, how was that for you when sort of managing how you were feeling, but also how they were all feeling?
It's like Satveer said, when you get that news and you're having to sit there and be like joking about it, having to tell your parents, "Oh, this will be fine. I'll get through this. This will be easy." Not easy, but you got to joke and laugh about it. And I think the amount of strength that I showed to my parents probably got them through it as well, just as much as it got me through it. I think with everyone's first time is absolutely brutal, and you keep going with them. As long as you show a strong face for them, they can keep showing a strong face for you, and you can feed into each other. But yeah, it was hard for my family, especially my brother and sister, because they were just going through GCSE, well, just really starting their journey into GCSEs and stuff.
The world seems kind of upside down, and that's sometimes reflected in relationships and whether that being the big brother, you're supposed to have a certain dynamic, or, that was just the dynamic that was there before. And that bringing up this feeling of guilt about what everyone else is going through. And Ceinwen, is that something that comes up with other people at Shine?
Yeah, definitely. The difficulties for the sort of the partners or the family members, they don't really get acknowledged a lot. So we hear a lot from partners, brothers, sisters, parents who are really struggling. But I think they're in a really difficult situation because, like Satveer says, it's not happening to them. They are surrounding the person who it's happening to. And so I think sometimes they feel, well, I shouldn't be feeling this bad. I don't need support. I can't ask for support because I'm not the person who has cancer. And actually, that's not true. So we at Shine run a specific program for the partners of young adults with incurable cancer, for example, because it's a really difficult place to be. But I think the guilt for both sets of people, whether you've got cancer or the people that are kind of looking after you, it's very real. And it's tough, right? Because for the people that are in our age group, like in 20s, 30s, and 40s, you're kind of used to looking after yourself and going out and doing things on your own. Or, like Kristen, you're kind of in university and you're looking forward to jobs and traveling and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden you can't do that. And to have that taken away from you, that rug pulled out from under you, is really difficult. It sets you back. And does change the dynamics of your relationships, because all of a sudden you're the person who needs looking after and you're sick. And again, that's not where you ever thought you would be.
We also have a Shine camp that family members come along to, so they can have their own side chats with other people kind of going through shifts, the differences, normalizing it, right? So because when they're talking to their friends, they also have that same thing of, well, they're neutropenic, for example, and then their friends going, what? Or is someone going, yeah, been there,
Yeah,
so that
exactly.
kind of normalizing continuing for family members too. And Christian, you gave such a good example of something like really practical that gave you a bit of ease. I'd love to hear some other things that you found useful, or that you wish that you had found a little bit sooner.
One of the things that Emma and I really wanted to do when we set Shine up was to try to ensure that people never felt as lonely as we did. And so, though we have a personal experiences page on the website, and we love to have, as many experiences as we can, because I found them super valuable when I was going through it. And I think finding somebody who had the same chemo as me, it was really, really important. And actually, I had quite a weird type of chemotherapy, because it was high dose chemotherapy, but I didn't have a stem cell transplant. And if I ever see online anyone who has that treatment, I'll message them, because I want them to know that, I'm still alive, and it can work, because I think it's really tough. Through our programs, you can meet other people who, even if they don't have the same cancer, they might have a similar experience. But I would say the one thing that I got a lot of, which I really at the end didn't want any more of, was like body lotion. People really think that when, I don't know if it's a female thing, but everybody really felt like I needed body lotion, and it was done with the best of intentions, but literally finished chemotherapy with 30 bottles of body lotion. So maybe don't do that. You can get something else.
Yeah. I can see why.
Yeah. Get someone a nice
really
moisturizer. You can see.
And Christian, you have done the Reset program with Shine.
Yeah.
And am I right in thinking that you joined some of the sessions from treatment or from hospital?
Yeah. So I think it was January 2024. So I think I either just found out I'd relapsed, or found out I relapsed during the reset program. I think I only missed one of them, because I think it was just as things were getting a bit dicey. But I think I came for most of them. But yeah, no, it was really good, really good. And actually, funnily enough, for those that are listening, I recently sent a message on that chat, and the responses I got were incredible.
Oh.
But you were saying on about people that that you'd speak to that have got the same cancer as you. Julia, who was on that course, either had, I think it was AML or ALL, I can't quite remember, but the only way I can describe it is you get like a fizzy feeling, you know, when you meet someone that's got the same cancer as you. I met a lovely lady on a different cancer retreat, Kat, who had AML, and you know, it is that moment of just bang, okay, I can actually really talk. Everyone's got a different mode of treatment, that kind of thing, even in, you know, blood cancers. But then talking to someone that's had the exact same treatment as you, it's sort of like a next level of back and forth that you get with them, and it's really amazing.
I love that description, that fizzy feeling.
Because it seems really funny to be excited to meet someone with the
Yeah.
same cancer that you have, but you're like, oh, I'm so excited.
You've had
It is,
this
it's a
horrible
fizzy thing.
treatment that I've had.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't wish it on anyone else, but since
Yeah.
you've had it, like,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, thank you so much to all of you for being on this episode. The things that have helped, from cooling towels to staying in contact with family, but also having that ability to be like, I'm sometimes might just drop in exhaustion halfway through a sentence. Yeah, Reddit forums, to finding other people, to joining a program, even if you're not at home, even if you're in hospital, finding other people to get that fizzy feeling, and no more body lotion.
I feel like someone's going to email me now and say, you gave me body lotion when I was diagnosed, so I apologize.
Thank you to all of you, and to all of you listening too. Thank you to Radio Facilities for sponsoring our podcast. And if you'd like to find out, you're like, where are these programs? What is this camp? What is Reset? You're finding out about lots of things. Go to shinecancersupport.org. Thank you to all of my guests. It was really lovely to have you all on. Until next time, bye.
Perfect.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.